Have you ever quit something, a job, a relationship, a city, because you told yourself, I need to find myself, and a year later, you still didn't know who you were? We've all heard it. Travel more, quit your job, move somewhere new, find yourself, and everything will make sense. But what if that promise was broken from the very beginning? By the end of this video, you'll understand why finding yourself is one of the most misunderstood ideas in modern self-help and what actually replaces it. Stay till the end, because the real answer isn't where you're searching. Picture someone packing a bag, quitting their job, buying a one-way ticket. They're chasing a feeling that somewhere out there, in some city, some mountain, some silence, their real self is waiting to be discovered. Months later, they come home, same person, same doubts, just a tan, and a few $1,000s lighter. Nothing was found because there was never anything sitting there waiting to be picked up. This is the myth of the buried self, the idea that somewhere underneath the noise, there's a fixed, true version of you, hidden like treasure, just waiting for the right trip, the right breakup, the right silence to reveal it. But decades of psychology research say something very different. Your identity isn't a buried object. It's closer to a story, one you're still writing, one page at a time, through what you do, not what you discover. Psychologists call this narrative identity, the theory that who you are is the story you construct from your experiences, stitched together to make sense of your past and point toward your future. You are not a hidden painting under a sheet. You're an author, mid-sentence, still deciding what happens next. And that changes everything about how finding yourself should actually work. So why does it still feel like searching? Because certain moments in life, a breakup, a graduation, a layoff, strip away the roles that used to define you, and suddenly, you don't know which lines to write next. Think about how many roles you juggle. Employee, friend, son or daughter, partner. Each one asks something different of you. And when too many of those roles go quiet at once, the silence feels like emptiness. Psychologist Erik Erikson called this identity confusion, a normal, almost necessary phase, where old roles fall away before new ones are built. It's not a malfunction. It's a phase everyone who grows eventually walks through. Then social media adds another layer. You see someone else's found life, their new city, their new hobby, their new confidence, and it feels like proof they solved something you haven't. But you're comparing your unfinished chapter to someone else's highlight reel. They didn't find anything either. They just posted the part that looked like they did. This is where most people make their first mistake. They wait for clarity before they act, as if certainty has to arrive first. And action comes only after. Real psychology shows it works the other way around. A concept called the action identity model shows that people don't act because they know who they are. They discover who they are because they acted. Doing comes first. Clarity follows. Someone doesn't become a musician by sitting and wondering if music is their true calling. They become one by picking up the instrument badly, for months, until the identity starts to fit. Psychologists call the experiences you collect through action identity capital. Every skill, every relationship, every risk you take becomes evidence you use later to answer the question, who am I? Not one dramatic trip, not one epiphany on a mountain. Small deposits, made consistently, that eventually build something solid enough to stand on. The second mistake is confusing escaping with exploring. Escaping is running from discomfort. Exploring is running toward information about what actually fits you and what doesn't. If someone quits every job, ends every relationship, and leaves every city the moment things get hard, they're not finding themselves. They're avoiding the version of themselves that shows up under pressure. Real exploration keeps some things constant, a discipline, a relationship, a commitment, while experimenting around the edges. That's how you learn what's actually you versus what was just comfortable avoidance. Psychologist James Marcia mapped this out using 2 questions. Have you explored your options? And have you committed to any of them? The answers place you into one of 4 identity stages. Diffusion, no exploring, no committing, just drifting. Foreclosure, committing without ever exploring, often to please others. moratorium, actively exploring, not yet committed, and identity achievement, having explored and chosen with clarity. If you feel lost right now, there's a good chance you're in moratorium, the exploring stage. It feels uncomfortable, but it's not a sign of being broken. It's the stage right before clarity. Researchers also study something called self-concept clarity, how clearly and consistently you understand your own traits, values, and beliefs. Low clarity feels like confusion. High clarity feels like knowing yourself. The encouraging part: self-concept clarity isn't fixed. It grows through consistent behavior, honest reflection, and, most importantly, through relationships where you're allowed to be the same person in every room. One of the biggest identity killers is being a different person for every audience. One version at work, another with old friends, another with family. None of them fully honest. Every time you switch masks, you delay clarity, because there's no single, stable version of you getting reinforced. The self can't solidify if it keeps changing shape to match the room. Real self-understanding doesn't come from a vibe, a location, or an aesthetic. It comes from values, the 2 or 3 things you consistently protect, even when it costs you something. A simple test: think of the last time you said no to something. What were you protecting? That answer is closer to you than any sunset photo from a solo trip abroad. The third mistake is measuring your progress against someone else's timeline, as if there's a deadline for having it figured out, and missing it means you're behind. There isn't one. Some people build clarity in their 20s, others rebuild it entirely in their 40s, after a career change or a major loss. The process resets more than once for most people. So how do you know you're actually growing, even when it feels confusing? First, you start noticing patterns in what drains you and what energizes you, instead of just reacting to each day blindly. Second, your reactions to old triggers start to change. Something that used to wreck your whole week now barely registers. That shift is quiet, but it's real evidence of change. Third, you start setting boundaries you never used to set, even if it disappoints people. That discomfort isn't a red flag. It's usually a sign your self-concept is getting sturdier. So what actually helps? Start with small, consistent commitments instead of big dramatic ones. A daily habit, a weekly practice, a skill you show up for, even when you don't feel like it. Next, keep a simple record journal, voice notes, anything of decisions you made and why. Months later, that record becomes a mirror, showing you the values you were actually living by. Then, spend time with people who knew you before your current chapter. They often reflect your growth back to you more clearly than a stranger in a new city ever could. Finally, stop asking, "Who am I?" as if it's a single hidden answer. Start asking, "What do I want to practice becoming?" That question actually moves you forward. Finding yourself was never really about finding. It was always about building one honest decision, one kept commitment, one uncomfortable boundary at a time. If you're in the confusing middle part right now, the part with no clear answers, that's not proof something is wrong with you. That's usually proof something real is finally under construction. You were never lost. You were just early in a story that hadn't been written far enough yet for the pattern to be visible. Keep writing it. If this described exactly where you are right now, tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if you want more videos that actually explain the psychology behind the things nobody talks about, subscribe, because this channel is just getting started, and there's a lot more truth to unpack.